much, folks. So I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds to get settled. I hope you've all been enjoying everything that Bushwick Film Festival has to offer. It's been an incredible a few days, and I'm so proud of the work that is being done. Amazing team. We're here today on a Sunday in October. I'm coming live to you from New York City, from Herge City, and we have a great lineup of panelists for you. I just want to start by saying that for me, stories spark a connection. And I think that's why it's important for us to really make sure that it's an inclusive space, because we want to make sure everyone from the writers to the directors to everyone involved with the projects, there's a diverse storytelling, because that's how we're going to make connections, a universal connection to all of us. So without further ado, I want to bring on our panelists. Which I'm so happy everyone in there is so busy that they agreed to join us. There's Tabitha Mason Elliott, I'm gonna hop on, and Carol Coleman. We have Ben Lopez. And Sue Obeidi. So everyone, welcome. I'm excited to have you all join us. We have a wonderful, wonderful lineup here. You're all in the space that is doing important work all around. As we all know that the numbers are abysmal for storytelling, right? We see it time and time again, award shows, you name it, everything. The numbers are not reflective of society. So we have a group of incredibly wonderful people moving the needle on that. So I want to kick it off by just kind of having a little, each person just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and the work that you're doing. Tabitha, if you want to just dive in.
Sure. So hi, my name is Tabitha Mason Elliott. I am with a company called Bark. I'm a partner there of two business partners, and I've been with that company for 8 years and a partner for the last 4. We make all kinds of content, a lot of branded content, commercial content, and long form TV shows. So that's the space we sort of work in. The work that I do regarding this is really more, I call it my volunteer work, which is all of my work with the AICP, which is the Association of Independent Commercial Producers. That organization represents 400 plus commercial and post-production companies across the commercial spectrum. And the work that we do there and that I've been sort of very instrumental in setting up is our new work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And a lot of that is really about changing the landscape, specifically around how commercials are filmed, how the storytellers are found and grown, and creating opportunities for people in that niche of the business. It's been sort of a historically difficult space to break into, period, but specifically more for people of color. So the efforts we've been leading there revolve around access and inclusion, equity, really resources for the companies that are members, as well as an extensive mentorship program, of which Gloria is actually our subcommittee co-chair for that. And we have over 70 mentees and mentors paired together now with the long-term goals of the organization to really be to change the landscape of commercials.
Ben, if you want to dive in next.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm the executive director of the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. Our job is to primarily uplift and develop and really be a launching pad for writers, producers, directors, and now we're diving into creative execs and the decision makers. This is a nonprofit that started 22 years ago. I happen to have been very fortunate to be one of their earliest volunteers 18 years ago, and I've always donated my time to the organization to the point that they were like, you know what, Ben, why don't you just work with us? So in 2014, they asked me to I was an independent producer during that whole time. And so they asked me to take over as projects director in 2016, in 2014 and 2016, they promoted me to ED. And obviously my one condition was I would love to be able to innovate programs here at the organization where we could really figure out the best way to activate the data about DEI and you know, how our Latina and BIPOC folks, how we can accelerate them and activate that data and work in partnership with the studios, the different sister organizations, sister communities, and together we can actually find a solution. And so I'm happy to say that I've been collaborating with a lot of different folks in the last few years. We've launched incredible incubators. We've also have collaborated with organizations such as, you know, Impact with Sue Ovady and a lot of people in the space. We're connecting all the dots, and I think we're getting to a point that we're much better coordinated. There's a lot of work to be done, but I'm happy to say that Latina community in this space is really advancing. So I see the glass half full because I'm really excited about the potential of what we could achieve together.
Thanks, Ben. Sue?
Thank you so much. I greet everyone with the Islamic saying, Assalamu alaikum. May peace and the blessings of God be with you. First of all, thank you, Bushwick Film Festival, and the organizers and my co-panelists, and you, Gloria, our moderator. I'm the director of the Muslim Public Affairs Council's Hollywood Bureau. We work in the industry to change the narrative around Muslims on TV and film. We are a public policy advocacy organization in its origins. We have an office in Washington, D.C. that works with government to basically do the same thing, get our young leaders into public policy so we can work on changing, you know, policies that may or may not be derogatory to underrepresented communities. So our Hollywood work, though, is it works in the industry again to tell better stories, to build better characters, better storylines and story arcs. We do this in 3 different ways. Number 1, we connect our emerging talent to industry decision makers by organizing our screenwriting labs. And we just finished one that was in partnership with the Black House Foundation, and it was with Black Muslim TV writers. The Black Muslim community is the largest Muslim community in America, and yet when you see Muslim narratives, you rarely see these narratives on TV and film. So we got a great traction with that lab. Number 2, we consult. We consult on TV and film projects. We are not a watchdog. We are partners within the industry to help tell better stories. The reason we decided not to be a watchdog, it's not taking anything away from organizations who are watchdogs. We just feel that we can get more mileage by creating relationships and establishing a trust where we can go in and get our screenwriters hired so then they can also go on to tell their stories. And then number 3, we contribute our thought leadership by organizing and speaking on panels like this one. And so we connect, consult, and contribute our thought leadership. That is what we do. And there are 3 C's because I needed to find a way to remember what we do. And that was the best way to do it, just creating the 3 C's. It's so nice to be here amongst all of you.
Thank you, Sue. Karen Coleman. And before we dive in, Karen, I just want to say I just joined her board and she will tell you more about Future of Film is Female. Thank you, Karen, for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm Karen, and I'm the founder of the Future of Film is Female. I founded it in 2018, so we're a relatively young organization, while I was the director of programming at Nighthawk Cinema. So the Future of Film is Female is a nonprofit organization, and we amplify the work of women and non-binary filmmakers through our short film fund. Since we founded, we've been able to help support 37 projects, and that's also been with the support of post-production services from Herd City and Nice Shoes. We're very focused on exhibition. I think it's because I'm a film programmer and because I feel as if, you know, we're kind of like closing that gap between production to exhibition, and representation on screen matters so much. So some of the exhibition stuff that we do, we're an ongoing series at the Museum of Modern Art. And now that cinemas are open back again, we're doing more things in cities in New York and beyond as 2022 comes around. And we're also a community building program, which I'm very excited that now we can see people in person we can build that more. But I'm also really excited to be on this panel because I think that the work that we do in gender parity intersects so much with racial parity in film and LGBTQI+. And so it's really wonderful to be a part of this conversation.
So I'm the eternal optimist, right? I always want to say like, we're going to, keep moving the needle, making change. But I know I have those days and moments where I'm just like, I have to take a deep breath because it's a lot of work, right? And we're just, we're just a little dot in a big, big world. And so what keeps you motivated? Like what keeps you, I mean, obviously the work is important, but what keeps you personally moving forward and energized? Love to know, because I'm sure that is some takeaways that people on this panel our guests can take away from.
Can I jump in? I am an immigrant to the United States, and what keeps me motivated is future generations not going through what my generation went through when we arrived, where my community, my faith was being vilified on TV and film, and that impacted how I saw myself and the work I had to do to get break the shackles of all that, and the emotional and mental shackles that I was always the other because I was made to feel like the other, and I just want to say I'm totally fine, and it was what I was meant to go through, but there's a lot to be said also for feeling like you belong all the time and that you don't feel otherized. And so what motivates me is future generations feeling that they belong and that they're part of the fabric of this country.
I think that's great because my thing falls in line very much in that, which is so much of what we do today affects tomorrow. And I think what motivates me is getting out of bed, knowing that I'm responsible for other people. I think between owning a company and then running organizations and programs that really affect people's lives. It's not super often, but every time someone emails you or texts you or tells you a story about how you inadvertently changed their trajectory or something they saw about themselves or what was possible, it's a reminder that the work you do matters. And that even when you're not sure it's having an effect, it is having an effect. And I think having some sense of responsibility to others and to the larger community. I grew up from the sort of motto of to whom much is given, much is required. And I believe that. I think that when you've had opportunities in life, there is an obligation almost to reach back, however you do it. And so that inspires me, knowing that the things we do today affect all the people coming behind us.
What keeps me motivated is the obsession of being able to prove a thesis, such as how can you grab this data about underrepresentation and actually create a strategy that can actually maybe change conditions for people, make it a little bit better for a woman director to get on the director's seat and be able to showcase a piece of content that can get her hired and get managers and agents and launch her career. And so, one example is we saw the data that came out of the USC study in 2019 that reflected about 1,300 films that came out between 2017 and 2018 that really were major releases, and only one happened to be directed by a Latina, and that was Patricia Regan for The 33. And instead of obviously looking at the doom and gloom, obviously horrible numbers, we felt, what can we do in activating that data? What is the thesis we can prove? Is like, why don't we really put all of it in like as many programs where we can incubate, women of color talent. And that was another key thing that we decided to do. Instead of just focusing on Latinas, we felt it's better to do it as a cohort of diverse women working together because they can share strategies and bring in their very unique POV. And so we partner up with Netflix and we set out to prove that thesis. And now I'm happy to say that this month we showcased that work from those women that we incubated. And so now we're going to have at least the 4 from Netflix, but another 6 that we started, incubated even a year ago. So I'm happy to say that we're going to contribute to those numbers. So that keeps me motivated because I love the challenge and, being able to be a diamond hunter and be able to say, how do we get this? Because they're already brilliant, right? This is the talent we just need to unlock and set it up right and basically set up a showcase for them. So I love being able to do that. And if we can multiply that with all the sister orgs, all of us coordinated, we can really make a difference.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I mean, my answer is pretty simple in the sense of, what motivates me are 2 things, my filmmakers and audiences. And, whether it's a filmmaker finishing a 4-minute one-shot horror short, or one of our filmmakers, Raven Jackson, working on her feature with A24 and Barry Jenkins, like, it's really satisfying because they're all really, really good people. It's like the core of what I want to do is like, I want to foster people who are in it for the right reasons, making incredible work, and also just like good people. Like, the industry needs really good people, to see them succeed is super important. But connecting these films with audiences is number one, the thing that motivates me more than anything. There's nothing better than standing in front of a sold out show for a super indie film with people who are just trusting you and this filmmaker that they're going to come in and see something and sort of change and shift that perspective of what can and should be seen in a cinema. And that's what motivates me. And then there's just a total work obsession. But other than that, it's it's them.
I think we do have to have that obsession, right? It has to, just because there's so many days where it's hard, where it's not easy work and it's not. But I find that spending time with others that are in the space, that are doing the work, is helpful. And I'm glad that you all made yourselves available to join us here. So I want to say thank you here. I like to keep it real in the sense that, just talk about challenges. I want to talk about, if you guys can walk us through something that, a challenging time or event to you, whether through the organization or personally, that you don't mind disclosing here, that, I just want to have our guests appreciate that, we all have our moments, and not to give up and to keep pushing forward, because we've all experienced, obviously, everything from gatekeepers that we all know exist in every space, to just like everyday stresses. So if you can share a challenge that you've encountered, and it doesn't have to be big, or, it doesn't have to be some, a little thing or a minor thing that think may be helpful to share.
Can I jump in again? I'll start, but I just wanted to say something that jump on something Tabitha said about the responsibility. I discussed what motivates me, but the responsibility that Tabitha talked about is what keeps me up at night. Am I ever doing enough, and how much more can we be doing? So I just wanted to say thank you for, saying that, Tabitha. Responsibility is huge. This is not a job, it's a movement. And with that becomes so much, weight. But anyway, a challenge is really interesting for the Muslim community, and what MPAC, has experienced throughout the years is that Muslims in general, and being a very specific, Muslim communities in general, never really saw the industry as an industry that they belong to. Generally Muslims are pushed to become doctors and engineers and lawyers and what have you. And the industry was almost pushed to the side as for someone else, for other communities. And so I often think about, the challenge of MPAC having to teach our community and our communities that no, this industry we belong in this industry. And I worry about all the opportunity costs, the time that kind of we weren't in this industry. And so it feels like we're catching up. We're playing catch up at this point. And I'm speaking specifically from my vantage point of 21 years at the Muslim Public Affairs Council. There was a lot of education that we had to do within our own community to get them to buy into, this is our industry too. We are not just bystanders. We belong, and we have contributions that will be beneficial for the overall good.
I love that. I also think that's pretty interesting just because I feel like I'm learning so much listening to everyone here, which is I hadn't really thought about how sometimes you have to convince the community to also buy into that this actually impacts you and what that is like. I think personal or professional challenges I get a lot are from young women and people entering the industry, this idea of, and this is a general thing, which is the idea of having it all or what you should focus on. And I often say that there are seasons in your life in which one thing or another is the thing that you're really focused on. And I have a family, I have children, I have a husband, and I think there's a notion that you can do everything at all times. And that's just categorically not true, right? It's like, if I am killing it at momming, I'm probably being super mediocre at something else. And there are times where I'm killing it at this work, and then something else in my company is probably falling through the cracks a little bit, that I have to sort of constantly rebalance and reshift what my priorities are. And really think about how that impacts your life. I will say, like, kudos to those of you who are doing this full time. This is incredibly emotionally draining work. Like, to be carrying all of this stuff all the time and constantly talking about equity, it is exhausting. So I will say that one of our challenges, and one of my challenges personally, is staying motivated about the work when it is so draining. And there are so many other priorities. You know, if this were my full-time job, maybe I'd have better strategies, you know, sort of for coping with the sort of heaviness of it all, and the sense of responsibility you have, right? But this is also like Gloria, who does a million other volunteer things. This is not your full-time job. So it is actually, there are some parts of that require balancing, recalibration, and sometimes sitting it down for a second, right? So you can sort of rebalance and sort of pour into yourself and into the other things and areas of your life that need you. And I think one of the challenges is kind of figuring out where you're most needed and when to back out of things and say no, or say, I can't take that on. And to care for self, and then jump back in. And you're allowed to jump back in. You're allowed to jump out and jump back in.
My head hurts from nodding so much. You know, so I'm going to echo everything that she just said, especially in terms of the momming versus the work, and how it is definitely fluctuates between the two. But I'm also going to be real basic and say, you know, one of the major challenges that is also emotional for me is the fundraising and the money. And, you know, for work and gender parity, there's a lot of talk about how important it is and how we support this, and we wear buttons, and it's great that, you know, they're winning awards, but at the same time, a lot of people don't put their money where their mouth is, or they put their money into larger, more sexier organizations that are starting something, rather than funneling that money into people who have already been doing the work in one way or another. So to me, it's one of the challenges, just in terms of keeping things afloat and eating and those sorts of things, but also just thinking about, you know, do people really care? So that, I know audiences care, I know people who like movies care, but the translating into, you know, the financial support is a huge struggle and challenge that I know for many arts organizations never ever goes away. So the momming and the money.
For me, I've really thought about all these different emerging content creators, and specifically looking at this future decision makers. And we were actually running like back-to-back incubators that would focus on empowering those folks. And what we found, because we brought in like mentors like Victoria Alonso, who's the president of physical production, VFX, you know, at Marvel. And what we ended up discussing wasn't really strategy. What it was is like being validated. And I think that's where in our community with Latinos, like, it's the hardest thing to feel valued at a company or a place where you feel like, am I worthy enough to now be promoted? And I think we actually shifted the program to not only give them the tools and the resources, but to be able to like take the time to reflect on what is it that there are some Latinos in this space that are now becoming presidents because they spent at least 6 to 8 years being assistants because they're so loyal and because they felt that they couldn't advance. So it had a lot to do with being seen, being validated, being promoted, and saying that it's okay. It's okay to say that I want to run this company. It's okay to say to your boss, like, not only do I admire the mentorship, but I actually want to be the you of the future, like very quickly. It's okay to say, you know what, I love what I'm doing right now, but I would love to be able to be promoted to this other part of the organization and so on and so on. So I think that's the challenge and the struggle that, especially in our community, that we found is that we didn't really see that many folks, you know, that reflected our realities. Because that's the other, speaking of a double challenge there is the US-based Latinos, US raised, US born. And many times they tell us, what are you talking about? This thing was solved already. You know, you have Del Toro, Cuarón, Iñárritu, they collect the hardware at the Oscars. What are you complaining about? You should be happy. You know, you got Latinos. I'm like, yes, but let's, the US-based Latinos, US born and US, you know, raised, those folks, they're 40 years behind. So that's the greater challenge. And the fact that we don't want to dismiss the achievements of our Latin American brothers and our Spaniard brothers. Obviously, we love Almodovar, right? We love the Spaniards, we love Brazilians, we embrace everybody. But the folks that are actually growing down the street from NYU and from USC, they can't get into those programs and they're struggling in this space. So that to me is, how do we empower them? How do we validate them? And how do we bring them up faster in this pipeline?
Thank you for sharing so much. Ben, you bring up a good point. Like I was born in Antigua, Guatemala, a small town in Guatemala. And here I am running an audio post company. So as immigrants, we're taught like, be a doctor, a lawyer, very specific kind of academic work. So I was kind of, not following the traditional path. So with all that, it's like, where do you make your space, right? Where do you create, where do you learn when, I can't go to my Tia Marta and be like, hey, how do I launch my audio post-production company? Hey, do you have any contacts, any directors or, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of lift that goes on into helping a person that's starting out or in middle of the career in our industry. Like, so how do you push that forward? For me personally, it was mentorship. We all know the importance of mentorship and sponsorship in any industry, but let alone in our industry where it's like who's been there already, who's like, who's got control of what. So cultivating talent. So I know all your organizations are doing great work around that. Would you please share some of them with our audience so maybe they can follow up with some of the work that we're doing, and how can they be part of the initiatives and programs that you're all individually part of? That'd be great.
I wanted to take a beat before I jumped in. Can I then go first on that?
Yeah.
Okay. My president, Salam El-Mariyati, president of MPAC, gave me 2 directives. My journey, by the way, at MPAC was director of operations because I was a corporate girl who was madly in love with, advocacy work. And so I did the corporate life, and then I had a midlife crisis. And the midlife crisis wasn't a fast car and crazy lifestyle. It was literally finding purpose. And that's why I came to MPAC. So he gave me 2 directives when I transferred from the director of operation role to the director of the Hollywood Bureau, and basically said, expand the network and do speaking engagements. And from that, organically, we created the Hollywood Advisory Committee at the at MPAC. And basically, expanding the network is telling people what you want to be doing as an organization, asking for help, and asking them to come on board and be part of your own journey. And then one person literally led to another person, literally led to a network of hundreds of people that I could call anytime and say, hey, I need advice. And they too can call me and say, Sue, we have a project, we need your advice. And so it literally comes down to what? Human touch, the humanity of it all, and just creating that foundation where, like in the Quran, God says to us, I created you so you can know and learn from one another. And that's it. Expand the network, get to know each other as human beings, and let that take off. And that's my advice, is just be as genuine as possible, and you'll lead the way with that.
That's great advice. I'll say that so personally, I hadn't really thought of myself as like a huge mentor, etc., to folks, but I think because that stuff, it hadn't been formalized for me. It's just, you have relationships with young people coming up through the industry, you sort of point them in the right direction, give them their first connection to someone, get them moving, right? You kind of get them moving in the business. And you don't really realize the impact sometimes until they're gone, right? So we had an internship program, we do a paid internship. We would have 2 interns, fall, spring, summer. And I'd always get these notes, right? These really nice notes at the end of the internship. And then that's when you sort of realize that those things are making an impact. And we were really intentional about finding interns, right? Atlanta is a huge college town, but there's also a ton of HBCUs here, as well as just schools that are well attended by people of color. So a lot of our interns are former, and a lot of our former employees are former interns. So I think you don't really think of it all the time as mentorship. And then it morphs into something where you're like, we have to be more intentional about this. So I think the AICP's effort in this space is about that. It's about advocacy, because I look at my career and the careers of people that are my contemporaries. And a lot of it is driven by the network, right? It's like when you say you want to do something, when you're looking in a space, you tell all the people this is what I want to do. They all sort of conspire to help you find that thing. They all just, even if it's just keeping their ears open and saying, oh, I know someone who would be perfect for that opportunity, let me reach out. It's so powerful. And when you're starting your career, you don't have one, right? You're building it from scratch. So you really need people who already have established networks to sort of draw you into their network, to let their network know that you need a thing. And I think that's so huge, and pivotal for career building, and pivotal for relationship building. You do something for someone, they remember that you've done something for them. You don't always have to do it with the intent of needing something back, but so much of how we build is being able to do for others. So you continue to do that. And the people you help today are really the people leading this industry 20 years from now, right? So they're the people who are going to be offering opportunities. A lot of people that I used to work for are people that have now like helped me staff projects, or said, oh no, I could do that. And I've hired people that I used to work for. So I think if you think of this industry as cyclical in a certain way, and really understand those connections and those points, you really have to invest in young people. You really have to invest in people who need to build, and that you have something to offer to, and they need your networks. They really do, because that's the only way you sort of move yourself into the space of really understanding how the business works, of really building, of really being able to grow in the direction you want to grow in. You don't do that without help.
I think it's interesting because that's really where the idea of community comes in. And, I believed this before, but I firmly believe this in this weird pandemic world that we're in for independent film, is that, I tell my son, and I say this all the time, like, teamwork makes the dream work. Like, it's going to be collaboration that is going to help everyone get to this future of film that we really want to get to. And for me, I feel like in terms of mentorship, I feel like it's sort of like I still need it. I have people in my life, mainly on my board, who help guide me and have experience. And we kind of like to call, you know, the people that we work with like gate openers rather than gatekeepers. And that's such a responsibility for the people that we want to work with. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, when I think I've been programming film for 10 years now, I mean, there are relationships I've had for almost those 10 years and they're still very fruitful. And you go, okay, now we're at this weird point where we've come together and now we're going to do this project together. And then a year later, it might be someone you met 6 months ago. But it is that network and that kind of kind community of people who are really working towards the same goal that I don't think that I talked about being like depressed about financially like supporting, but the support I feel has grown so much in the past couple of years of people who are now at my age and my level who are doing things and seeing how they've grown, and we're all working together. But I don't know where I'd be without my board of like Raj and Julie and Gloria and Flo, because they really hit all aspects of what I need to check myself on and learn from. And the idea of community is just sort of everything. So.
From our side, echoing what everybody has said, collaboration and being able to be highly supportive of one another. One of the things that Nalip has really prioritized was that collaboration with organizations that are really already doing amazing work in specific niche spaces, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So for example, I remember seeing Gold House, you know, doing amazing Gold Open type of, where they would actually commit all these resources, business and community led, to buy out theaters, not just tickets, which was, you know, very tactical. They were very strategic. They're like, why don't we buy out theaters and support AAPI films throughout the space? So I've always wanted to do that, but at that point of the organization, we couldn't do that. So what we decided to do, why don't we just combine forces, and we launched the Latinx Gold Open together. And then, so we got behind and we did a massive buyout of theaters throughout the US. And it was life-changing, not only for us, but being able to work together. That's the way it should be. And by the way, it wasn't just Gold House. We also brought in Black organizations to help us. And because we don't want to reinvent the wheel, it needs to be done as a community-led effort. So I think that was a really good page, you know, a good part of the strategy, because then we were already implementing it across, right? I think we've done really good work with Sundance, and also, you know, coming in with, several organizations such as Impact, where we're doing like big work, macro work about basically mapping out the best way that we can work together on a longitudinal type of way, like the creation of a universe that is actually going to be equitable. I mean, this is like major type of work that's backed by the NEA now. And so I'm proud of that work, because it's really bringing the interfaith, all the intersections of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But also, we don't shy away, for example, from like social justice, right? We're very upfront about social justice. The way we're doing is like through advocacy and action, because we definitely want to make sure that we achieve parity. And now we're looking at the playbooks of a lot of the other orgs. And that to me is extremely empowering. Like, I can feel like we're building a seat at a table, but now we're building all these other tables that are actually moving much faster than what we were thinking. The scarcity model, that's another thing that we started demolishing. Everybody in this space, especially in the Latino space, felt that there was only one source of basically the typical studios that you had to collaborate with. I'm like, there's more where that came from. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars available of resources, right? At the end of the day, this is also a business proposition. I think there's a way we can achieve all of that balance and still make sure that the people that we're pushing forward, they can be the artists that will end up at the Telluride Film Festival, or they could actually be folks that you know, get nominated for awards, or the Robert Rodriguez that's going to be, you know, general market, you know, the action type of movies. And I wanted to make sure the Latinos, specifically in that space, get seen, and that with that, you know, different lens, that we're not just the immigrant stories, the maid stories, the crime, prostitution, all the stories that you see, the tropes. We're much more exciting community. And so I think this is open, like it's opening finally up for us. But now that we're embracing this inter-community, inter-group, type of work with the organizations, now we can do it a little bit faster. So again, I'm obsessed with that idea. Let's do it together a little bit more coordinated.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I also think it's important to say, like, there is the equity and inclusion component, but also the quality of stories, right, that are brought forward by the diversity of voices. I mean, when you think about all the work that sparks something in you, that it's really come forward through a diverse voice. So I think it's harmful to kind of not intentionally move forward with trying to get all the voices heard, because you really have, all this beautiful art comes forward when you do amplify underrepresented voices. And it's a really, important thing that we do that in all of our different sectors. So you're all the groups that are on the panel, you're all doing some great work. I mean, we do work with artists, right? That's who we're supporting and pushing forward. So can you talk about like one initiative quickly that you think that in your group that is pushing forward those independent artists?
Okay, I gave another beat. I'll just jump in. For us, it's the screenwriting labs where we're identifying and nurturing talent. We currently have a fellowship with Film Independent. So for us, it is scouring, and it's not such a hard task. We have such talent in the industry, but finding the talent that could be part of the major initiatives like Film Independent fellowships or some of the Sundance fellowships. We haven't launched this yet, but we will be soon launching a CAA, a fellowship with CAA. So, it is identifying and nurturing and then connecting our talent into the industry. And that's how we're getting our stories told.
I guess I'll go next. Well, one, I think a big part of what we're doing is a lot of the work with our committees, which are, one, I think a big shift for our business was really getting people who are executive producer level, head of production level, and company owners really invested in this as their responsibility. And making their own shifts and holding themselves accountable. I think that's a really big part of any of these initiatives in order to make them lasting and in order to keep it sort of top of mind. So getting our industry by and large to be really introspective. And then I think our mentorship programs, right? Our mentorship programs are really sort of, I think, a core component of what long-term change looks like. It's not going to be overnight. But this year we had 70 people participating, over 70 people participating as mentors and building up that community. And I imagine that as the program grows, as will the kinds of mentors and people available. And what we're looking for is that sort of sensibility is when you've been given a thing and you've been able to build a network, you continue to do that. So 10 years from now, we don't have to charge people with being mentors or looking for these sort of relationships. They are actually understand this as a sort of inherent value system that they have and something they should also be doing and reaching back. Our mentorship program goes for 9 months, so we'll probably reopen it in the spring of next year for people to apply to. We usually publicize it widely, and you can pretty much check out the ASCP's website where to find out about the other initiatives and things that we're doing overall. But I do want, people to check that out. And also as a part of that program, we're doing these roundtable discussions as well, which sort of offer perspectives from people across our industry in different parts of the process to really do a little bit of educating and also opening the door to having bigger conversations with different people and being able to ask questions. I think that's so powerful, and really your understanding of where you want to be, where you want to go is really knowing people's story and being able to ask questions about how they got to where they are to sort of chart your own path.
Thanks, Tabitha.
Well, I'll say, one of the initiatives that we have is our ongoing series at MoMA, and that started in 2018. And, the intention of it is to show debut features or second features of films directed by women whom we feel are kind of worthy of you to look at now, but also in consideration for the future, because so many women make powerful first films and then their second film's not great and then they don't get to make anything else. Whereas male directors get to kind of fail and fail often. And so we pair feature films with short films. And you know, a great example of sort of what we want this to be is we hosted a preview screening of Nia DaCosta's Little Woods. And, you know, now she's taking over the world. And so, you know, she's getting chances to do things on a big scale. And that to us is what success looks like. And I totally blanked what I was going to say next about MoMA, but that it's kind of like evolving with the times. So now we're sort of looking at how do we, now that things have changed in the 3 years that we've been doing this, how do we sort of incorporate film festivals who have been getting really good at gender parity in their festival circuits, whereas distribution does not meet that proportion. And so many incredible films that we see are getting lost and not getting theatrical distribution or runs or special screenings. And so we're trying to rectify that. And then now that I'm no longer the director of programming at Nighthawk, but I am still doing programming there, initiating an ongoing look at these films on that level. So, you know, MoMA is an incredible platform, but we also want to be able to get outside of New York. And, you know, I grew up in Florida, in South Florida. And, you know, if I had had anything close to what we have in New York in terms of the arts, I would have been a very happy person. I had to like drive to Atlanta to see things. And so my goal is really for us to be able to expand our programming into kind of non-urban areas and areas outside of Los Angeles and New York to kind of get these films more into normalized culture.
So one of the crown jewels that we have several programs, right? We do a lot of events and we have a lot of incubators now that leading the way. But one of them that it really took a long time to develop, essentially was a moonshot, was when, as we were doing the work with a lot of the different studios and production companies, agencies, we found that, okay, we're developing, right, all these cohorts of writers, producers, directors. We have 20, what was back then, 18-year history of doing that effectively. However, how do we accelerate it? Because to the point brought up earlier, we didn't have enough door openers for us, but the content buyers, you know, we got the content sellers, but we didn't have the content buyers and the decision makers. So how do we multiply the number of Latinos and people of color that are behind those desks and actually making those decisions, right? And so we teamed up with Walt Disney Company and Stars Lionsgate and the Motion Picture Association of America and Amblin Partners and Searchlight. And so with all those different partners, we decided, hey, this moonshot is going to help create the next decision makers through a fellowship. And because as you have seen, obviously it's very hard for Latinos and people of color to make it out here in Hollywood or New York without salary, right? You can't do those unpaid internships or fellowships because this is folks that are diamonds. These people are ready to go. These are not at the entry level. This is people that produced before that are ready to become the next generation. So we made sure that we built in a compensation, right? So the fellows would be paid for 6 months to be able to concentrate and dedicate those energies to be able to be considered not as an intern. This is people that have a track record. We already found these diamonds. They need just the opportunity to be seen in that room and let them demonstrate, to immediately contribute in that space with the hope that they're actually going to be hired by a lot of these production companies that have pod deals and so on and so on. So I give a lot of credit to the leadership. And obviously, one of my dreams happened, you know, having even Steven Spielberg officially endorse the program through Amblin Partners and coming out and saying, hey, you guys are doing great work. We want to see more of this. So that leads the way. We got to make sure that we also have our white allies in the space that are actually help us to uplift. So I'm glad this is the Latino Lens Producers Pipeline Incubator Program. And for more information, I'm sure that they'll be sharing the websites of all the different orgs up here. Thank you.
You bring a very important topic forward in terms of money, right? Money. We should talk about it, both as organizations, right? I mean, fundraising for organizations during pandemic has been really difficult, but also as independent artists, it's, you know, you need to get compensated for the work that you're doing. So I know time is tight, so I do want to open up to Q&A, but I do want to plant that seed to whoever's on that not to be shy about digging into the money aspect, and also as organizations as well. I know it's a challenging time with pandemic and like in terms of networking and trying to fundraise, but to really just keep moving forward with that. Because it's a sad but true fact that we do need money to live, to pay bills, to make our projects come to fruition. So don't be shy about having those conversations and digging forward with those as organizations, as all what the work that we're doing. Please do check out all the websites. Our panelists have been so generous with their time, and I do love where we went. We're as gate openers. I do hope that our short time here has been a gate opening time with here. And so I appreciate. Thank you, Karen, so much for that reference, because I do want to leave it on a positive and next steps note. But I want to open it up to the audience for Q&A. And if you panelists want to say just a word about just give someone some nugget of wisdom moving forward in their career, but maybe we should open it up. Sumaya, what do you think?
Absolutely. I love that idea, Gloria. The first question we have is from Fabio Prado. I would like to know how the inclusion of people with disabilities is part of the mission of each of the studio's organizations our panelists work at.
So we've gotten this question a bit this year. We do a monthly series called Commitment to Change, which we're sort of revamping now, but we highlighted organizations. We've had a couple organizations that deal exclusively with people with disabilities. And really what we're trying to do is open up the same sorts of doors for those folks, right? Is that we recognize that there are some parity issues around that. And I think our companies are offering those same opportunities. We're looking for those organizations. We've worked with a couple of them to sort of highlight those spaces, but largely the same opportunities are available with internships, with being a part of these programs and with reach outs. And we sort of encourage that all around. When we say equity and inclusion, we do mean that. So we mean across the board. So the reach outs we've done have not been specific to that space, but have been open to that space.
And on my end, impact belongs to many collaboratives who include disability organizations as well. And when we are doing our labs and our programming, we're definitely talking, in addition to talking about, and when we talk about intersectionality, the disability, community is definitely part of this overall narrative when it comes to Muslim narratives. But I'm happy to say that in our experience, and Ben, I think you're part of these collaboratives as well, there are disability organizations that are doing fantastic work. And so that's definitely front and center as well. And thank you, Fabio, for that question, because that's very, very important.
We have another question is, how can we be more intentional about making young people purpose-driven opposed to career-driven? How do we encourage them along with society as a whole to focus on daily purpose and positively impact the film industry and beyond?
I would say I don't think they're separate things. I think you can be career-driven. Purpose is a core belief, is a core idea that you have, and it leads you. Just if you were a person of faith, you aren't choosing faith over career or career over faith. It is a core part of your identity. That isn't something I necessarily take responsibility for. I think the person that we have, and I actually see this more with younger people than I've ever seen with people my age or older, is that they do care deeply about these things, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You can care a lot about your career and bring your full person to that. And if your full person is the kind of person who cares about purpose, you'll bring that to every aspect of your life.
And I agree 1,000%. I just want to also add to what Tabitha said, that I'm a woman of a certain age, and I'm very happy to say it, I don't care, that I have found greater happiness, you know, in and being in a mission-driven purpose, you know, purpose-filled space than I ever did as one of the top bankers in corporate America. So so Tabitha is right on. I also just want to add, find your happiness, and it could be a happy medium, but really honestly, living a dream, which I am living a dream, is also very, very difficult, emotionally draining, physically draining. But at the end of the day, I put my head on that pillow happier than I ever did when I was a successful corporate girl.
Great answer. I think this is the last question. What advice would you give to people who may not be in the film industry, but would like to tell the stories of the people around them? I think Sue just made a good point. Find your happiness.
Also recommend, there's so much technology out here that allows you to, and platforms that allow you to tell stories. In fact, people are gravitating to stories that are a little bit more, again, purpose-driven, very organic. They're actually intentional. People gravitate to honesty and sincerity, you know, and because they can tell. That's the thing about audiences, right? They're so smart. They can tell if you're manufactured, or if it's too slick, or something's going on there. And I think people that overall they put in the work, that means that you don't need to have technique. Believe me, this is the era that you don't even have to have it, you know, even film school, media. By the way, my respect to all the people that paid over 200K, you know, for the film school education. But I'm saying there's definitely DIYs out there that have managed to tell stories in the most amazing ways, and they're very low tech. I'm excited about the audio space, podcasting. You're able to launch a podcast that allows you to find an audience that you can eventually, those stories could scale to become something. And guess what? My recommendation is, like, it's okay if you're not a trained storyteller, but there's plenty of people in this ecosystem that are going to find you. They're going to want to work with you. And some of them are going to want to tell those stories, maybe turning that podcast or that blog into a story, into a movie, television series. So I would say, be open, tell your story, develop it. And by the way, do not give up. That's the one thing I tell everybody. Never give up on your dream. It might be manifested in many different areas, and you are going to learn different things. Maybe you might go the road not taking, become a banker, and then become an attorney. I don't know. You might go through that. You might have that life change, midlife crisis, but I think it's an opportunity so listen to yourself, and I hope that you're prolific. Be prolific.
Ben, that's a wonderful way to end our panel. But yeah, I do want to say we're all interconnected. We're all, you know, in this together, and hopefully you have some positive energy to move forward with in your in whatever chapter you're in your life, because you're never too young or too old to really kind of just dive into what you want to do, whatever storytelling and however you want to do it. So I appreciate and I'm grateful for all of our panelists. Thank you for coming here and sharing your stories. And I'm grateful for everyone who joined us today, because I know the path is not always straight or easy or clear, but you find your way and you dig in. Research, connect. Not everyone's going to be open to connecting, but so then you move on to the next person, and just got to keep moving forward. So thank you all, and enjoy your rest of your Sunday.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Gloria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you.